Welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. I'm joined today by my good mate, Gavin Webster. How are you, Gavin?
I'm very well, thanks, Steve.
Good to have you on, mate. Top comic in the Northeast, and also involved Heaton Stan, which we'll talk about a little later. Another good non-league club. I put my Dunstan top on just so I can, have a big crack about that. But first and foremost, Gavin, you're a Newcastle fan like myself. Tell us a little bit about how you got into supporting Newcastle. What was your first game?
Well, my family all support Newcastle. I was brought up in Bladen on Tyne, which obviously has got links with the song, of course. My mother was a big Newcastle fan. My granddad was a big Newcastle fan. He went to the 1932 FA Cup final.
Wow!
Which is, it's not many people have got them links now. Or certainly they don't remember that. But he told us all about it. And that's the famous over the line final where the ball got squared back to it was Jack Allen who scored it, and it was. The ball was, I think it was over the line. There's a film footage freezed, and Richardson pulls it back. All these things.
Didn't need VAR for that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't necessary. I've got some great footage. It's out there on social media, but it was on the BBC of a Geordie arguing with an Arsenal fan in 1952. Yeah, we won the cup in '52, and they were arguing. And this Geordie, I think he's a bit of a sort of Ashington or Pityaker accent, and he's arguing with this Arsenal fan, and he's saying about the ball definitely being not over the line in 1932, and it's he's having this big row with his Cockney, and that was a famous final, as you know, and my granddad was at that game. I don't know of anybody else that was.
No. Have you got the ticket or anything, or the programme?
No, I haven't. When I knew my granddad, he died in the 80s, but as a kid, he said he had loads of programmes, but he just threw them out. But a lot of that generation did, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously it's in the family. Can you remember what your first game was as a fan? Yeah,
I do. Well, I went to loads of reserve games first, in sort of when we were still in the first division in 76, 77, 78. But my first team game, because they wouldn't, at the time there was loads of hooliganism, so my mum wouldn't let us go to games. But the first game I went to with my dad was against Bristol Rovers in 1979, towards the end of the 78-79 season. We won 3-0, but we weren't going anywhere. It was we were going to finish mid-table, and the first season back down in the old second division, and we finished mid-table. And it was 3-0. Peter With scored the first goal with a header.
Wow! And what was your first impression of the match day experience? Because sometimes it's a bit foreboding, and the noise and the sounds and all that. But did you enjoy it?
Yeah, there wasn't that many there. It's because back in them days, as you know, there was no season ticket holders as such, en masse like there is now.
Yeah.
I heard a quote from Malcolm McDonald saying in the early 70s, Newcastle had 1,500 season ticket holders. And I can imagine by late 70s, 78, 79, I bet you there was maybe twice that, no more, there'd be very few. So what happened was at the end of a season, when it looked like we weren't going to go anywhere, the crowds would just drop off, and that's where you get, Steve, as you know. I bet you suffer from this. Fans cherry picking one game out from the late 70s, early 80s, going, oh yeah, that's you think you're the best supporters in the land. You used to get 11,000 every week back in and you go, no, we didn't. We had that for one game at the end of a season, and if you look at the averages, it's a lot higher, and that's the nature of what fans did then. You didn't have, unless you are going for a relegation or a promotion scrap, what's the point? Even if you're a hardened, loyal supporter, when the season's petering out and going nowhere, there's no point in really going. So there wasn't many there. What I remember was it was very, very colourful, because back in them days we still had a black and white telly, and most people I knew did as well. The odd person on a colour telly, but there's quite. It sounds ridiculous. It's quite a great time in the 70s as well. There's not much.
Was I?
And to go there to see the green baize, to see the green pitch, and I presume Bristol Rovers would have been in that half blue and white thing, and Newcastle.
Yeah, proper old strips.
Yeah, exactly, old school. And just the colour is quite an amazing thing, isn't it? And then you go to a first big match, and that's perhaps a bit better. But I just think the whole it's an amazing experience. I think even today to go to it's a great spectacle, a football match, even a relatively low down one, isn't it? Because it's so expansive and big a football ground,
First hero then. Who was your first hero? Because I mean, going that early, I suppose you just timed it right, because you were coming towards Keegan being unveiled as the big marquee signing in '82. Where in heaven where we've got Kevin and all that.
Yeah, I remember that. And well, I suppose the first one before I went to the game, because I'm just a bit too young for Malcolm McDonald. I mean, I remember him, and I remember when he left, but I was only a kid. But funnily enough, sort of default centre forward was Mickey Burns, because he was originally a winger, and then he got converted to a centre forward, and he scored loads of goals, and we nearly won the league in 1977. People forget that. Finished fifth, and just lost 4 of the last 5 or something. So I remember people talking about Mickey Burns and wanted to be him in the playground, and then we got relegated, but he still finished top scorer. But so Mickey Burns was the first, but I never saw him live, and so the first one I remember as a big hero was then Peter With, because we signed Peter With, and he just played for Nottingham Forest when they won the league, but he got signed by Newcastle. I found out years later he got a massive signing on fee, and it was like, I think they're trying to placate the supporters who were proper pissed off at the time because we'd gone down, we'd lost half the team, so they needed a big, as you say, like a marquee signing, but obviously it didn't work out like Keegan, but he was the big signing, and I still to this day think Peter With's maybe not the best centre forward we've had, because I've obviously seen Shearer, but definitely in the top 5. Peter With, he was a terrific centre forward, and he used to play up front, obviously with Alan Shoulder, who was a signing from non-league, which is like from the sublime to the ridiculous, and they were like the twin strike force, so they'd probably be my first heroes as such.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, I know you've watched it. We had David Icke on the other day, and he was talking about Keegan's debut. Were you lucky enough to go to that, or was that a game where you just missed out? Because I can imagine tickets being at a premium for that game.
Didn't get to that one. I was on holiday in Wales. It was just ironic because I'd been watching all that season of talking about With and Shoulder, 2 seasons of that, and then when Arthur Cox took over in 80, 81, 81, 82. We were going nowhere, and I saw some awful matches, and I mean awful games back then. 0-0s, loads of 0-0s, and I think it was the lowest we ever were. And then obviously Kevin Keegan came quite late, I think, in the close season.
Yeah,
it was quite a weird thing. And I was on holiday in Wales, and I'll tell you exactly where I was that day. I was watching Cardiff against Wrexham in the what was the 3rd division, which League One now.
Yeah.
2-1 to Wrexham, I remember it well. And there was about 4,000 there at Ninian Park, and it was just horrible going back in the car. There's my fella's car, and I was in the car and like listening to Sports Report, and they never stopped going on about Keegan. I mean, the reaction to it and the coverage to it in elsewhere, this is South Wales, was phenomenal. It was all over the news, and then I think it was a Match of the Day that night. It was like huge, but I missed out on the bloody thing.
I mean, did you get to many games that season, the following season, the promotion season?
Yeah, never missed a home game in 83, 84.
Oh, fantastic. I'm so jealous, because my first Newcastle games, of course, were the back end of that season, I managed to get to I'd been to a lot of games with my granddad as a referee assessor. I'd actually been to watch Gateshead play in the Northern Premier League for 2 seasons, and I'd seen, every cloud's got a silver line, and I got a chance to see Terry Hibbert play for 2 full seasons.
I've been at them games as well, Steve. Yeah, I went to them games.
Bob Toppin up front as well.
Bob Toppin, Steve Holbrook playing up front. But
what a team!
They're a great team, and if you remember, that's great that you mentioned that, because Terry Hibbert at the time, because obviously he had a knee injury, and then he went. I remember about Newcastle before that in the second spell, not the first one. But then he went to Gateshead. But if you remember, he was like Zinedine Zidane, wasn't he? He was like spraying passes everywhere, and it was phenomenal. And it was almost a lesson to a young lad about how to look like you've got time on the ball, and his range of passes. He was going short, he was going long, and he was phenomenal. He drove the team. As far as I'm aware, could be wrong here, But I think they might have been the first team since, because it was 3 points for a win, I think they might have been the first team in this country to get over 100 points.
I think it was right when they won the Northern Premier League. I think you're right. I actually found some old programs and a couple of old photographs from the old wind-on camera that you used to have before. Yeah, yes, kids, before mobiles, kids. But yeah, the old wind-on camera, and I took some photographs of them being presented with a trophy at the stadium, and fascinating. Just a couple of grainy images of Terry Hibbert and Bob Toppin holding it up. Great days, and of course, I was lucky enough that season. I'm pretty sure you probably would have gone to this game. Then Newcastle, of course, sent a team along to play Gateshead at the stadium, a bit of a fundraiser, and I think it was either the back end of that season. I think it was. I think Newcastle won 7-1. I think Kenny Wharton got 4 in that game, and he might have got 3. But the highlight of it was, for me, was I thought my dad was best pals with David McCreery, because as you do, you want to, as a kid, you want to stand outside the dressing room and try and get some autographs, and that's what I did at Gateshead. And the players came out, Waddler, Beardsley, and all signed me program, and then David McCreery comes out and he looks up and he goes, "All right, John," and then signs me program. Well, of course, my dad's name's John, so he goes back in. So for years, I thought my dad knew David McCreery, and it was over a pint pre-match one year recently that I'd said to my dad, I says, "It's funny, I've got to know David McCreery. How did you know him, Dad?" And I we cited that story. He says, "Oh, I didn't know him." He says, "That's what Irish people say when they don't know your name." I was like, "Oh God, you all right, John?" And I was like, "Oh." Absolutely.
I didn't know where I was expecting it to go that he pre-thought of that. I didn't. No. I didn't know that people did that.
Absolute classic that. But never mind. It shattered me illusions. My dad didn't actually know David McCreery. I'm probably sure that I've asked David McCreery the story if he knew me dad, and he probably politely said yes. But there we go.
Well, it's a bit like how people around here say, "All right, Geordie," sometimes when they're talking people on a building site or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So obviously that season was fantastic. Promotion, and we've got to touch a little bit on Big Jack, because obviously we've just lost him. He came in, and that was probably my first season as a Newcastle fan, when I was sneaking away. My dad still didn't want us to go to the games because of the hooliganism element, but I sneaked off and managed to get to a few games. Big Jack, really, great character. Didn't quite hit it off with the Newcastle fans, though, did he?
No, it didn't work out, and it was. I think it was by the sounds of it, was just because of the culture clash with the football he was playing. It's a weird one though, isn't it? Because if you look back in Newcastle's history, I didn't want to sound controversial here, but we've got like a monument up, a statue up to Bobby Robson. Yeah. And in reality, let's look at it objectively. He had a couple of seasons not going anywhere, then he finished 4th, 3rd and 5th. And it's good, and he's a good 8 out of 10 manager. But you could argue that like Jack Charlton came in a season, just steadied the boat. Gordon Lee came in the 70s, and even though he's hated for selling McDonald, he got to a League Cup final, and then he fashioned a team that were right up in the top 5. Even though he left, he was only there 18 months. But in terms of games, he did all right. It's like it's weird how we I don't know, not canonise maybe, and who we don't because of maybe the football they play. I don't know, or whether because as a club we've got such arbitrary levels of success. We've had so many years where there's nothing, then we suddenly get a load, almost too much, and then we have, we're of a similar generation, where I think we're perhaps more accepting of some managers than maybe people 10 years younger than us, because they'd only known success. Then you've got youngins now who've not seen anything good. Yeah. And then you've got people generations above us that might have a different level of patience towards a manager than others, because it depends what era you've been going in. But Jack Charlton, in my view, I think might have fashioned a really good, effective, winning team if he'd been allowed to, if people weren't barracking him and wanted rid of him. But whether people would have enjoyed it or not, I don't know, because the football he was putting on offer was a long, big diagonal ball game, wasn't it? You can't really deny that, by the signings he made.
It's funny, we were talking last night on Ladies' Night just about the best and worst managers, and you're right. Yeah, and I mean Bobby Robson does get put on a pedestal purely because probably what he did. He turned Shearer's career back round. He got us to the semi-finals of the cup. But you're right, there has been a degree of success, and it's funny how people measure that. I think we all agree Kevin Keegan's spell at the club, not just as a player but then as a manager, was massively successful as far as putting the club on the map. It might not have been successful in the trophy cabinet. Yeah.
Well, exactly. He didn't win anything, but I think Keegan saved us not once but twice as a player and a manager. And I think, that can't be, you wouldn't be exaggerating when you say that. We were completely on our arse in 82 and in 92, I think.
Yeah.
By the sounds of it, in 62, Joe Harvey came. Apparently, we were completely without a paddle then. We were in a bad way. But when Bobby Robson arrived, people say, look at the state we were in when he arrived. We were bottom of the table after losing a few games, which we would have stayed up. It's not, it's not. I think there's a couple of people rewriting history there.
Yeah. Kevin Keegan's spell as a manager, that's. I hope that's what puts him at the top of the tree for me. I always feel he gave me the best football that I've ever seen as a fan, and not only that, but he doesn't get enough credit for keeping us up. He kept us up that season when it looked like mission impossible. We were on our way to the third division, and then to assemble a team. To bring in a young Andy Cole, who I've got to remember, everyone was scratching their heads going, Andy Cole, what you bringing him in for? Failed at Arsenal, dodgy signing. He goes on to beat Hughie Gallagher's record, obviously with the help of Peter Beardsley, who was a master stroke signing, and then establishes us in the Premier League. Not just establishes in the Premier League, but puts us up there fighting with Man United for titles.
Yeah, absolutely. And it again, another stat. I think I could be wrong here, but as far as I'm aware, Kevin Keegan never sold any player as a loss. Every single one got sold on as a profit. And, people, talk about, again, people say, oh, look at the money he had. He bought £60 million worth of players and they won nothing. But, he sold 30 million. And if you remember, Steve, when he became manager, when we had Ozzy Dealers as manager, people were saying, well, how are we going to get out of this? We're nearly bankrupt. The only saleable asset we've got is Kevin Scott. I remember people saying that. And it's you'll only get $500,000 for him. And when you think, there's no disrespect to Kevin Scott, he did a great job at Newcastle, but the fact that he was allegedly our only saleable asset to the fact that the side that got assembled in the next 2, 3, 4, and then 5 years from Kevin Keegan, from nothing. The idea that we were the Chelsea or the Man City of our team's nonsense. We still had signings. We had loan signings and free signings at first, and the hoo-ha that John Hall went off with when we signed Brian Kilcline for $500,000 was everybody knew about that, and the signings were gradually built up. I think Andy Cole was only 1.8 or something. He wasn't a massive signing. And Peter Beardsley was bought when people said he was finished. He was 32 or something. And so they were inspiring signings, Venison, I think, was to do with all the connections Terry McDermott had at Liverpool. Beresford, although there was a lot of money, was, again, untried at the top level. Inspiring signings, the whole lot.
Scott Sellers, Kevin Sheedy, some great players that were had. I mean, Kilcline often gets mentioned as the best pound-for-pound signing, but I think Rob Lee probably gets that title, doesn't he?
Yeah.
What a player.
Oh, tremendous. And that's why people like Kevin Keegan are who they are, and people like me aren't, because I remember when Rob Lee came and he played against Middlesbrough in the League Cup, and I remember watching him going, he's not a great player, this bloke. He seems a bit one-paced, and he doesn't seem as though he's got a burst, he's not got... And he turned out to be perhaps one of the best signings we ever made, because he could see something and he could see where he could fit in the grand scheme of things. He was going to be running everything from the middle of midfield, and perfect fit as well for this club. And that's why I think Kevin Keegan can do no wrong in my eyes as a manager.
Would he be your best manager then that you've had at the club in your time? Do you think?
Easily, yeah.
Easily, yeah. I would say. Who's your worst then?
The worst, right, since I've been...
Worst manager.
Well, when I was first there, Bill McGarry was pretty bad. But obviously, I was a kid then. But you look back, it wasn't much of a side. But I don't think there was any money getting thrown at the club then. So I'd say in more recent times, God, there's quite a choice here, isn't there?
There's a few names got bandied around when we did this with the girls. I mean, my top three for the worst managers was Joe Kinnear, had to go top statistically.
Yeah.
Steve McLaren.
Yes.
And Sam Allardyce. That was my top. That was my top three.
I was going to mention Allardyce there. That was the one that came to mind, but then I forgot about Steve McLaren, and that was pretty bad. He had a bit of money thrown at him as well.
Yes, Souness was bloody awful as well.
Yes, Souness was pretty awful. He really was, and you can't even if you were like paid to defend Souness, it would be very difficult to do it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Ruud Gullit for simply for not giving Rob Lee a squad number, but taking training in a deck chair and then not being here most of the time.
Doing things through bloody mindedness. Not only the incident against Sunderland where he played Paul Robinson up top on his own and dropped Shearer and Duncan Ferguson, but he played Stephen Glass, and I almost think he did things just to piss people off, And I think when you start doing that as a manager, I've got no time for you, No matter who you.
I mean, Steve Bruce, obviously the current manager. What's your views on him?
I don't think he's particularly bad. I always quite liked him as a manager. I don't know what he's like personally. I don't know what he's like the way he operates with people. But as a manager, I think you can't argue with what he's like in the Championship, and he's got not a bad CV, and he's managed at a lot of clubs, and I think he could go into most clubs and he could just take up the reins, couldn't he? Because he knows what he's doing. But as far as the top level goes, and as far as what Newcastle United want, he's not the man.
No, definitely not. You're not going to get any arguments off me, or I would doubt of anybody watching on that. What's the most memorable game for you then, as a Newcastle fan, that you've been to?
The most memorable game. There's a few. I remember in the season we got promoted in 83-84, we were playing Fulham, and it was around about bonfire night, and we were 2-1 down. Malcolm McDonald would be manager of Fulham then. We were 2-1 down with about 2 minutes to go. Then we got an equaliser, and then I think it was Kenny Wharton got the winner, and we won 3-2. It was a brilliant game. And then at the end, just when everybody was going mental, loads of bangers and rocket launchers went up in the sky. It's almost like celebrating the win. That's one of them. And then there's about 1990, the first season we had Mickey Quinn and Mark McGee. We played at home at Leicester, and it was Roy Aitken's debut, and we came back from, I think it was 4-2 down. I think we went 1 up. I can't remember exactly. We were 4-2 down, and we won 5-4.
What a game that was.
Great game, wasn't it? And I remember taking my dad to that one. He'd long since not been going to games. I took him and says, "Do you want to go to the match?" And because I was playing football at the time, I think it got postponed, so I went with my dad. And I was up alongside the almost the touchline. It was in the Gallagher end when McGee scored them. And from what I remember, and I'm sure this can be verified on YouTube, the equaliser and the winner are almost carbon copies of goals. He gets the ball back to goal. He turns. If you can remember, Mark McGee was very quick at turning. He's really good at swivelling in a very small grid square space. I think with him being little, but like as good as Beardsley, I think at that. He was terrific. And as you know, he had no pace, but that's what he could do. And he turned both times, and I think fired shots in the corner. I think with the side of his foot, because he was quite good with the side of his foot rather than like thumping the leather off it, and both goals are exactly the same. Amazing. But what a great game that was.
Do you remember Mark McGee's goal against Bradford that season? It was a dire game, but it was the last minute, and he jinxed past about 6 or 7 players. Bradford had the white strip on, and he just slotted it in. That was probably one of the goals of the season. Great
goal. He was great at that, wasn't he? He was like he had this terrific knack of dribbling past people, and he was a good team player as well. With Mickey Quinn, he was terrific. I think if he had some sort of pace, I really think he might have been right up there, world class. You know, but he was a bit slow, wasn't he? But he was a terrific player. Like, it's a shame we got him right at the end of his career and right at the beginning of his career. His best years were in the middle, weren't they? And it was. I think it's a trivia question. Only Newcastle player that played in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
That's a great one, yeah. I mean, it's one of them. I remember him coming. There was like a bit of a groan from older supporters, you know, remember him, you know, what he'd been like. And then, you know, he certainly came back and put the record straight. It was a fact, you know, for all that we got beat by Sunderland in the playoffs, you know, that was a fantastic season. That was probably, you know, we didn't get promoted, but, you know, it was one of those where you look back with fond memories. And Quinny for a number 9 was just outstanding. He got off to such a great start against Leeds and never looked back.
Yeah. Oh, and we, you know, I think Jim Smith was a decent manager. I think we were the best footballing side in the league. I think I'd say, and we just used to give away late goals. If you remember, we just used to, for some reason, give away late goals. And you know, if we didn't have that, we'd be away playing sailing because, as you say, Quinn scored a hell of a lot of goals, and McGee scored a load of goals as well, and. We just seem to have this good unit. You know, Kevin Brock was a great player at that time. You know, he's a proper good footballer. And it all seemed to work. But as you know, we're typical Newcastle, we fell at the final hurdle, like, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, history's littered with with stuff like that. I'm going to bring in the dreaded T word now, the takeover. You know, it couldn't have come at a worse time, could it, really? Everybody locked down, a pandemic, everyone, you know, people losing their jobs, people losing loved ones. And then, you know, typical of our luck, we get a takeover slap bang in the middle of it, which, you know, could potentially make us the richest club, not just in the UK, but in the world. Yeah,
I know. It's kind of our timing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm sure you probably know more than me, but... I had a feeling something was going to go wrong, and it certainly did, didn't it?
Mike Ashley obviously owns the club at the minute. I suppose the one positive we can take out of it is that he is keen to sell it. I mean, he's currently trying to buy the high street. You know, he's bought DW Sports over the last 24 hours, and you know, his main aim seems to be domineering, you know, retail, and especially in the sports market. But you know, he wants to sell the club, which is what majority of Newcastle fans have wanted.
Yeah, but to be honest though, Steve, he's been saying this since season number 1, hasn't he? He wanted rid of the club. He's always been saying he wants to sell, and then you hear that he doesn't want to sell, and you know, his PR face is that. I think part of the times it comes from his PR people, but then other times it comes from him because it sounds a bit knee jerk sometimes. But he's always been saying that he wants to sell, but it still hasn't happened yet, has it?
No, definitely not. Well, we'll just case of watch this space. Hopefully, you know, something will develop. You know, I'm still confident that it will happen, but you know, we'll have to wait and see. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, what you do for a living. Obviously, you'll have been affected with you know what's going on, the pandemic and COVID, just like me. Obviously, I do events. You know, you put on a hell of a lot of events. You're on the circuit as well. But how did you become a comedian?
I was. A friend of mine called Les, Eric Scarborough, he decided to do some stand-up comedy, and he wanted me to be his double act partner. And I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm not a funny man. I've got no interest in doing stand-up comedy. So he persuaded me to do it. This is at the Cumberland Arms in Baker in 1992, a sort of new talent night for alternative comedians as was at the time. And then he said, right, we're opening our own club. We're opening in Gateshead at the Barley Moor, which isn't there now, just at the bottom of the high street, next to the dual carriageway. And he says, we're going to start that, and it's going to be called Reckless Eric's. I
remember that.
Yeah, spelled differently to the stiff artist, but yeah, he started that off in February of 1992, and that's when I first got up on stage on my own. But because we're a double act, he called it Scarborough and Thick, as in Morgan and Wise. So he was Scarborough and I was Thick. So I went up on stage as Little Ernie Thick, which just, I was never comfortable with that. And that's when I first did a gig, February 1992. And still didn't want to do it, but then gradually did a couple more. Then he drifted off. He didn't want to do it anymore. Something happened, domestic upheavals or whatever, so I carried on running this club, even though
How did that first night go? How did that first night go? Were you nervous, and was it a success?
The double act stuff was like weird because he just gave me all the lines, so it wasn't funny looking back. He gave me all the lines, typical straight man lines, like Steve. Like straight man lines, like my lines. What, really? Did you? When? When did that happen? Why? Really? God, a mouse. And it was all that kind of like his lines to his punchlines. But that was awful. But then when I first got up in Gateshead, he gave us 3 jokes to do, 3 bits of material he'd written, and it didn't go so bad. But then I thought, this is rubbish. This going on a name that isn't my name. I don't really want to do it. And somebody's given us some material to do. So next month I did my own stuff, and it wasn't very good. So the first one wasn't bad. I was really nervous, yes, to answer your question.
Yeah.
But the next month I did it my own, and then it wasn't good, but it was mine. And then I went back to my real name. And then, then you build it up from ground zero. And then he long since drifted off, and then I was left just trying to find gigs. And the fortunate thing was I was on the dole at the time, so you've got now to lose. You know what I mean? Now to lose.
Yeah. So obviously you continue with them. Is it difficult? I mean, writing your own material, is it observational comedy that you were looking at? What kind of comedy were you doing, or just alternate?
Well, it was just a blank canvas, really. And the advantage was, Steve, is like I was never really a fan of stand-up as such. Myself, I didn't know. You get a lot of people on the circuit who they're like connoisseurs. They're very like, there's almost done a degree in it. They know all about the history of it and American comedians and the history of stand-up and its development over the years, and they've watched documentaries and read books. But I didn't really know anything about it. I used to like Monty Python. My dad got us into that. My dad liked Tommy Cooper and things like Benny Hill and stuff like that. And he told us about them. So I just came from it from that kind of angle, and Les Dawson and stuff. So just trying to write jokes like them, try to like go around and write sort of jokes, like he used to have my mother-in-law's so fat, or the town where I come from is so rough, diddle diddle diddle. So I was thinking, well, I'll write some of them on my own, the area where I live is so rough, such and such, and trying to make them as ridiculous and surreal as possible. And if you're going to do observations, just think of things. Think of alternate observations. Just think of anything you could do that you thought was funny. And the good thing is, when you've got a blank canvas like that, you're not sort of saying, oh, that's a bit like this person or a bit like that person. You just go for it. And as I say, I was on the dole at the time, and in those gigs, it's not like the working men's clubs where you would have to get a laugh, otherwise you get paid off. There's all these kind of alternative gigs run by misfits and weirdos and sort of hippies and feminist women, which is quite good as well, because it teaches you straight away to know that there's different worlds out there. You're not just playing to one lot and another, but then you play at the public who are just normal Joes who are just going, tell us a joke, mate, back in the day, people didn't understand about observations. They thought like you had to hear jokes. So in a way, it was a perfect storm, really. It's a good grounding in the 90s to suddenly start from a blank canvas and just invent your own style. And it's been quite good, because a lot of people have been very kind over the years and say that being influential to what they do. But I didn't have anybody to go off. There was only like Bobby Thompson and people like that from the past. There was nobody to go off to like try and sort of be like them as such. You just went for it,
Has it become more difficult in the industry with the world becoming more PC? I mean, even this morning, I'm seeing people debating last night at the proms. They're not going to allow anybody to sing "Land of Hope and Glory" because it's offensive and it refers to the old days of slavery. So, PC world, has it gone mad with top quality comedy from the 70s, being taken off various things like BBC iPlayer because, it might have, some offensive, words in it about a certain race. It must make comedy difficult.
Well, to go back to what I was saying before, like feminist women used to run gigs, and I remember a couple of them, and they ran them, and they would pull you up on things you said back in the day. But it's nothing like now. I mean, if you look back now, they're really, really, they're really diplomatic and quite mild. They were just saying, look, you can't be really, you can't say horrific things about women or whatever. And you look back and they were right, you know, because you don't make yourself charming if you don't. That's not really the right way of putting it. You look like a horrible person if you're just ranting and raving about people. If you look back at the 70s, for example, alleged racist jokes and all that, it's not done from a position of hatred. It's just done from like an observation or a joke. You can tell hatred, can't you, from somebody who's just telling a joke. And I think now a lot of, I mean, God, we could debate this all night, like, but a lot of people, I think, find offence because they want to find offence and they don't really know what they're offended about. And sometimes it comes from a lot of people, a lot of white middle class people who've never struggled in the first place, you know, and tell you what you should and shouldn't say to a certain group of people. I mean, when you think about it, where white working class people from the 80s on Tyneside, where there was no jobs and we had no hope. So we're not exactly from an elitist group or, you know, when people talk about white privilege, I mean, you think, what's that? You know, where you brought up in Dunstan in the late 80s where there was no jobs. Come on, you know, like we're hardly privileged. Do you know what I mean? Now, I think that's, but as I say, we'll talk about this for a long
We could. I've got to be honest, it does my head in, like all of this PC stuff. But, you know, if you start going on about it, you know, you mention it on social media, you just get barraged and, you know, you get labelled as something. And social media definitely doesn't help. Give us your toughest crowd. What was the toughest crowd you played in front of?
Well, you know, like all comics, we've all died. You know what I mean? I think I've done about, estimate about 7,000 or 8,000 gigs in my career, and
wow.
So about died at some of them. I mean, most of the time you just do all right, and then you know there might be 100 where you had such a phenomenal time. It was through the roof, and then you might have 100 where you really struggled and you know went off to your own footsteps. But the ones I can remember once dying horrifically, and it was just after the 1998 Cup final because there was loads of Arsenal fans in. I died at a snooker club in Hatfield in Hertfordshire. I've always called it Shatfield since. But then I met some people years later from, I think they call it Flitwick. It's pronounced Flitwick. Pronounced Flitwick. It spells Flitwick down in Hertfordshire. And they says it's all right because we call it, everybody down there calls it Hatefield. It's just one of them horrible little towns, you know, nasty edge towns. And I always remember there was a bloke called Harry who ran it. He called himself H. That's the sort of wanker he was. And he just, they didn't give me a chance. They just were chanting stuff about Vieira and everything when they won the cup. But like, they didn't understand what I was doing. They didn't give me a minute to you know, to establish myself. And I've always hated the place since. And that was a horrible death. And I've had some pretty bad times. I've had times where people have sent private messages on email saying how you've got the cheek to be paid after that. I always remember that one after a night in Wales. You know, what do you mean, how I've got the cheek to be paid? I've looked back and, like, you know, when people shouted at footballers in the 80s saying how they've got the cheek to pick up their wages after that, you think, come on, mate, you know, they're doing a job. There's been many nights like that. I think that's a bad one. One in the northeast where I did badly was at the cricket club in Anfield Plain. I always remember that one. I was on with Peter Beardsley, funny enough, and he went on and did. It was in a weird place. There was pillars everywhere, and he stood up at the end of a table. It was a dinner, you know, and he did his thing there. And I thought, that's really weird that people have got to like look around the corner to see him. Yeah, exactly. And then like, because you'll have been at these dinners and probably hosted them and all that, and some of them are really good, as you know. Some of them are all right. You just do your thing and go. Some of them are fantastic, but like this one, everybody's arcing round the corner to see him. He did it. He did all right. I mean, you know, and Peter, and he admit himself, he did all right. Didn't do amazing. And then they got me on, and I thought, this is a mistake I made, by the way. I'll not stand where everybody's, you know, looking round the corner. I'll go at the bar and do it so people can see us. And I think it took the focal point away. And you know, it's all psychology. This Steve, there's a tiny bit of them thinking, "What the fuck does he think he is? He's gone to the bar to try and do it rather than just stand where he was." And they just never got into it from the moment I opened my mouth. And it's one of the few times in all the 8,000 gigs where I just went, "It didn't work out tonight." I still got my money though. I was always I should always remember that. You still go and I still went. There's loads of comics I know that went, "Oh, I didn't even think I couldn't go up to him and get paid." I just felt so ashamed. You think, no, you don't do that. I still went up. I remember the end of the night, and I'm still proud of that. That you know, the age you get to, we say, "Could I have my money, please?" Because you know, you go, "No, I still did me thing, and I still did me time." But
exactly.
You know,
exactly. What's your best one then? There must be a one which really stands out. Your biggest gig, maybe, or your biggest crowd, or was it a particular reaction where you just had a great night all around? Is there one that stands out?
No, not really. I don't think so. I can't think. I've done one-man shows in the Tyne Theatre, and they've been legendary nights, and I used to do them in the Live Theatre back in the day. One-man shows in the Tyne Theatre have been really good, and there was I did a weekend once in the late 90s in the Hyena Cafe when it was first downstairs. I don't know if you remember it in them days.
Yeah.
Downstairs at the Hyena Cafe. It was a weekend I did with Johnny Vegas and a fella called Anthony King. And Johnny Vegas was just coming through at the time. And we did the Friday and Saturday, and the Friday was terrific and the Saturday was terrific. But I remember he had a ukulele. He used to play songs on the ukulele, just short, quick, sort of sweary type songs. And then he came on at the end. And as you know, Johnny Vegas has got an awful voice, but it's the whole, it's the idea of him getting up and being pissed and everything. That's the attraction. It's not like the quality of his voice. So he got up and he did an encore of American Pie at the end, and he says, "Would you like to accompany me in the song with the ukulele?" And I did, and it was awful. It was massively out of tune, but it was one of them moments. It was like, I suppose, like watching the Sex Pistols. It was a great moment, and everybody was into it. And then the next night, Anthony King, I don't suppose he watches this, he was a bit pissed off that he missed out on this encore. So he said the next night, he says, "Right, I've brought me guitar so we can all do the encore together." And it wasn't the same, you know what I mean? Because it was all engineered, and he walked on with his guitar with a strap on, and he'd learned the chords and everything. And if you can understand what I mean, the moment's gone. It was the chaos and the brilliance of that night that you didn't know what was going to happen. And I'm sure people walked away and went, "That was just great. I don't know what the fuck happened there." But then on the Saturday, it just looked all organised, and it taught us a big lesson, that one. You know what I mean?
I will do, yeah. That's a great story. I could talk about the comedy all day. Give a shout for your website before we get on to the non-league stuff. Where can people find you? Where can people, contact you to book you, etc.?
I've got my website is gavinwebster.co.uk. I do a live podcast on Saturday night wherever I am, where I'm gigging or when before lockdown, I would stop the car and I would do this at midnight called the Comedy Results. And I do the comedy results where comedians ring in and tell us how their gigs have gone, and punters ring in and tell us what the gigs they've seen. It's a bit like Sports Report on 5 Live. It's the comedy results, and it's 12 midnight till 2 in the morning every Saturday, and that is on mixlr.com/Gavin Webster. That's a good one to catch me on.
I'll get the link off you that, and I'll stick that down in the box below so people can click on that. Makes it easy for you. So I'll get that off you. Fantastic, mate. And you also do the football show, which I've been to one, I think, over the course of time. But you've had some great guests on there down at the stand. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, that was as my first footballing hero was Mickey Burns, and there was a free night at the stand, and it was just next to Burns night, so we decided to have a Mickey Burns night, and we thought, right, we'll invite Mickey, but he didn't want to come, but he lives in Lancashire or something in there. But he sent a nice letter, and we thought, well, we'll kind of just talk with Mickey Burns for 2 hours. So we just we got a guest on. We got Dave Johns, comedian and actor, to do stuff, and then we got a hold of Ron McGarry and Dave Hilly, and they came on and talked about their football life, and then we did a few jokes, and then after it was a success, so we just carried it on. We call it the Football Show with 4 years, and it's every month, and you know, that's up and down. Depends what guests you've got on. You'll know about this, Steve. Some people can just talk for Britain, and then other people are a bit more quiet. But we've had all sorts of people on, not just ex-pros. We've had you know, different people from the world of show business and football directors, and you know, we've had the captain of Wallsend Boys Club women's team, and all sorts of people. Referees, obviously, they figure highly, and so we do that. We have you know, pictures and videos up, so it's a proper bit of football satire at the top. You know, jokes about what's been going on in football that week, and then we get the guests on. But obviously, it's having a bit of a hiatus at the moment because there's no live gigs allowed. So
what's the situation? What's the situation with the stand? And because I suppose it's like every other venue, you know, in and around Newcastle at the minute. Obviously, standing still, you know, waiting to open. Is it going to cope all right financially? Are they doing anything to try and keep themselves afloat?
They're in a bit of bother at the moment, you know, because it's well publicised. So they're hoping for a grant, because the other two stand venues are in Scotland, or in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and they're hoping to get a rescue package together to sort that out. And of course, in Newcastle, they were playing gigs on the mezzanine on the outside area in the last few weeks, but they're back at the weekend. They're back this weekend, actually. The weekend of August the 28th. They're doing gigs downstairs, but it's to reduce capacity. So everywhere's suffering, as you know. Hopefully they can get out of this and carry on, because I don't know what I'd do without the stand. It's a great local venue.
Yeah, well, you know, get on and try and get to those gigs. Anybody who's watching, and you know, you got to support these venues when they reopen, because you know, if you don't, we're gonna lose them, which would be a tragedy. I want to finish off with non-league. Obviously, I'm on the Dunstan committee, and you know, been involved with them for the last few years. Thoroughly enjoyed it, the ups and downs of non-league football. You're involved at Heaton Stan, commercial manager there. So tell us a little bit about the football club, and you know, give us a bit of spiel. Use this opportunity to promote Heaton Stan, really.
Yeah, it's a football club that's been around over 100 years now, but 110 years, and I think they've had a few different grounds. Then eventually they settled in what is now Groundsel Park, which is Newton Park, which is up at the top end of High Heaton, you know, on the near South Gosforth, and it's was a former quarry. And as a football club, they've had their ups and downs over the years, you know, just circumstances has prevented them getting promoted. Then they've been in different leagues, but in recent years, the last sort of 10 years, they've got a newish management team together, got the football side together, and they won the Alliance League and got into the Northern League, and they've been in the Northern League second division ever since. But as a football club, they've organically grown with crowds. The crowds have got better, and it's one of the highest supported clubs in the second division, if not the highest, because obviously the ones that have had the highest crowds, you know this with Dunstan, have gone to the higher leagues. And you know, Dunstan's a great model, because I think, you know, without making you blush here, they've always said in meetings that a lot of the committee at Heaton have said Dunstan's the model we always want to, you know, we want to attain. You know, that's the one that we always look at, because it, you know, there's rights and wrong ways of doing it, isn't there? And some non-league teams have grown so well, and obviously, I think with the maybe the apathy of what's gone on at Newcastle in the last 30 years, people just say, well, we're going nowhere. That people have gone to local clubs, and local clubs have done well out of it. Now, personally speaking, I'm a big fan. I know you are as well, because we touched on Gateshead. I'm a fan of all the local clubs.
Yeah.
I'd like to think the North East could be a force. It's a shame, because we're as an area that we've produced not only the 5 or 6 world-class players that you could rattle off easily or more in the last 40, 50 years, but the production line, it's a bit like Scotland, the production line of you know, very good players, average players, you know, just the journeyman, the conveyor belt of terrific footballers that have come from this area. It's a shame we don't have clubs beyond the sort of 3 big clubs in the North East. In the league, there's no Hartlepool and Darlington in the league these days. You know, it's a crying shame, and I think long may it continue. You know, the the bottom end, you know, the kitchen sink, like, if you like, of football. We need these clubs to grow, don't we?
Yeah, no, we do. So, I mean, with Heaton Stan, obviously, we've had the news, same as Dunstan, really, that, you know, supporters are allowed in, you know, minimal supporters at this moment in time anyway, but at least it's something. You know, when it does eventually get back to normal, what's the cost of a season ticket for Heaton Stan, or how much does it cost just to pay and come and watch a game?
£75 a season ticket. It's £5 a game. I think it's a bit more higher up you go, but it's £5, and you can do lots of things to help. You can sponsor a match ball, you know, all those things. As you know, you can get your name in the programme. You can even just go to the game, even if you're not very interested. You can go and drink in the bar. That all helps, you know. Every little helps. But you'll see it. You'll see good football, as you know this, Steve. You see proper tackling, and
Great.
yeah, it's proper good stuff. It's like it's almost from yesteryear, but it's a proper good game. It's the nuts and bolts of football. It's the cool face, and it's a terrific thing to watch. I'd recommend it to anybody, not just to come to Heaton Stan. If you're in the area, go and find your local club and follow them, and keep giving them support, because they're part of the community as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Heaton Stan, you know, back in the day with Dunstan. It's you know, like a lot of these places, it's a welcoming club. You know, you always have a good time. And you see, and as you say, it's good to watch a game of football which, you know, hasn't got all the, you know, the showbiz of like the Premier League. It's just refreshing. You go, you can smell the grass. You can, you know, you see proper challenges. You have a bit banter with the liner and the referee. There's always somebody in the crowd who you can hear with it. There's always somebody who comes up with a quip. It's like it's what football was when we started watching it back in the 70s and 80s, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You're bang on with that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you get a chance to get along to Heaton Stan or Dunstan, please do. As I say, once the COVID restrictions lift, and get on to Gavin's website. You know, as I say, he's still doing his podcast, which is great, and I'm sure that the stand will, you'll be back on. Is there any live gigs for you there coming up? Is there one that you want to promote?
4th and 5th of September, I think that's what it is. On 4th and 5th of September at the stand, but I'm back there with a full bill. And I'm at the Team Theatre next year, 5th of March. 5th of March, I'm at the Team Theatre doing a one-man show. So it'd be great if you could come and watch that. That's Live to Actual People, which is the title of the show. Gavin Webster plays live to actual people.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, does what it says in the tin. Hopefully that'll be full of people, and we can it'll be all new stuff. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Finally, look ahead to next season. Newcastle United. Let's imagine that the takeover doesn't go through. Let's be realistic at this moment in time. We've signed Hendricks, not Jimmy. We've signed Mark Gillespie, another goalkeeper, and we've signed. It looks as if we're probably going to be in the market for more loan buys. We desperately need a centre forward. What's your view moving forward? Do you think Newcastle's got enough in that squad at the moment to keep us up?
It's a depressing conversation, this, isn't it?
It is. You can finish with a joke, Gavin. So we'll not finish on a depression. So I'll give you time to think of a joke. We'll finish on a joke. We'll finish on a high.
Oh man. I think, going back to Steve Bruce, I think he's got enough in him to probably keep us up, because he's used to having squads like that. And I think we probably will. I thought we would go down last season, but we didn't. We pulled it together and we stayed up. And I think we might just have enough in us to stay up. But that's it. I don't think we're going to do any more than that.
Yeah, I would agree. Mate. I've got to be honest. I think I thought Newcastle would go down last season. I wasn't happy with Bruce at all after coming from Rafa. I'm not talking about the quality of football. I'm just literally talking about Rafa gave us hope. You expected to stay up with Rafa at the helm, but with Steve Bruce, I just shook my head and I couldn't believe it. But yeah, I'm the same as you. I trust Bruce a little bit in the transfer window to be able to bring in players on this kind of zero budget. But I just hope the takeover goes through. I really do. The takeover goes through. It's not going to be Rome's not built in a day, but at least we'll have our hope back and we'll have our club back from Ashley, you know. So fingers crossed. Go on, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, but you know, any is there a joke you could finish off with? Doesn't have to be football related, but
God, I'll do. Shall I tell you the first joke I ever wrote?
Yes, do that.
And this used to get big laughs, actually. No pressure. I used to say, my mother, she's just had a hysterectomy. She thinks it gives her license to sit in her house all day and order me about. I don't know. She's bloody uterusless.
That's the first one you wrote.
Yeah. And people at the time say, you can't, you know, the people that ran
Can't
say,
say that.
cannot say that. You can. It's weird, isn't it? It's come full circle. You cannot say that. I said, why? They said, because, you know, you're making light of hysterectomies or something like that. But, well, it's just a joke. It's play on words, but worked really well. So there you go. That's a lesson for somebody. I don't know.
It's a cracker. It's a cracker. Great stuff, mate. Absolutely. Listen, could speak to you all day, Gavin. Really appreciate you coming on. Best of luck with the shows at the Stand, and then of course at the Time Theatre next year. Hopefully I'll be able to get along to one. And thanks as well for you know, always being there for the charity football games. You've played in the PAV Cup a couple of times as well, which is great. Pleasure. So big thanks to you for coming on, mate, and best of luck with everything you do.
Likewise, mate. Great to talk to you, Steve. Cheers, man.
Thanks.